the fuck is that guy?
I make my own moves, yeah, I'm bossing.
All weak bitches, please proceed to the exit.
Is there no one else? Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
We are Not For The Weak.
Welcome to the Not For The Weak podcast. It's your boy James.
It's Jeremy.
And we're back at it again. Surprise, surprise, motherfuckers. We got a guest.
A dope one.
Yeah. A strong dude.
House strong.
Ooh, I see what you did there. But yeah, we got a guest today, Jimmy House. He's a powerlifter, jiu-jitsu, wrestling hybrid.
Yeah. Super cool dude. Really cool to talk to and just kind of pick his brain on how he balances, powerlifting and jiu-jitsu and wrestling and all that. And then talked a little bit with him about the growth of his House Strong team and all that, and how big his presence was at Iron Wars and things of that nature. So it was really insightful, really cool guy.
Yeah, he's making some big moves.
Mm-hmm.
We met him a couple years back at Iron Wars 3, and just to see the growth that he's made from that until now in just such a short period of time has been incredible. And he's a bad motherfucker.
He is, yeah.
Strong and
strong, dude.
And he can beat your ass probably.
Yeah, he can choke you
for the most part. For the most part, probably most of the population he could probably choke the fuck out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got him, and it's a cool conversation. We talked a little bit about training and the mixture of jiu-jitsu and powerlifting and how he kind of balances the two. And then we talk about some deadlifting tips and nutrition tips and time management stuff. And it's a good one. So stick around for that. In the meantime, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, all the good stuff. Check out notfortheweak.com. Grab you some merch. We got the Fuck Deload shirts. We got the Huge Facts
shirts and tanks.
Hybrid World Tour shirts are coming next week. And yeah. Also check out gunsmithbrand.com. Still got some stuff up there. Not very many tees, but we got some hats and water bottles. So yeah, get your shit. Yeah.
Yep.
Let's go. Jimmy House. So what's going on, Big Jimmy? You just
not much. I'm hanging out at the Jiu-Jitsu, the MMA training center that I train out of right now. And that's where the sign in the background's for. So I got training right after this. So I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah, there you go. That's crazy, man. Like the whole jiu-jitsu, and then on top of that, lifting like super heavy and powerlifting, like trying to find the balance between the two, right?
Yeah, and so the funny thing about that is, like, I get that all the time because the two sports seem so far away from each other, but because of the fact that powerlifting, some of the different injuries or nagging pains that you accumulate with tightness and joint pain and joint aches and whatnot, the jiu-jitsu is actually a nice complement to that for me, because I always tell people that I consider it a form of active recovery, in a sense that, with jiu-jitsu, obviously it's going to behoove you to be mobile, flexible, and all the different things. You're always moving. With obviously the extra sweating and blood flow, that's going to speed up the recovery process. So with the jiu-jitsu, has actually allowed me to train heavier, a little bit more consistently, because I'm doing some type of active recovery multiple times a week. And, not that I'm against mobility work or getting massages or chiropractic work or anything like that. I think those are all great additions, but I actually don't even do as much as probably my people would think of, like a powerlifter that lifts as, to the level that I do, just because of the jiu-jitsu that I add in.
Yeah.
That's kind of been my mixture of the two.
Well, it's like almost a different type of mobility, because it's like you're saying, it's like an active version, whereas opposed to like just sitting on a foam roller or something and like rolling out, like, yeah, you're stretching the tissue, but you're not really engaging it,
Yeah, totally. And I like to think, there's mobility work, there's like stretching and stuff like that, but there's also, with jiu-jitsu or other forms of mobility work that specifically focus on this, but it's being able to be mobile, but also strengthen the muscles in the different mobile positions. Like with powerlifting, it's about being strong and on a static plane, being in a stationary position. But in jiu-jitsu, obviously you can't assume what position you're going to be in 100% of the time. You got to be able to move be strong and be flexible in multiple different positions. And that's where the carryover, I think, was nice for me when it came to doing the two sports together. Because when I was doing powerlifting, like that was my one thing 100% of the time. Like it was getting kind of bad to the point to where, like, if I did try to do something athletic, like if I wanted to go back to a wrestling room and wrestle around for a little bit, I'd be feeling it for 3 to 4 days afterwards. And that was kind of like that kind of hit home for me at the time, because wrestling was like the thing that I truly loved the most outside of lifting, and like to be able to not do it as efficiently as I used to was kind of a wake up call for me. And I knew it was time to kind of make a change. I didn't want to abandon lifting, but I wanted to find a way to be able to efficiently do both, because that's a part of me as well.
Right. Yeah. I kind of had a similar thing when I was doing, I started doing a lot of bodybuilding, and I found myself struggling. Like I did bodybuilding for, like, I trained specifically bodybuilding for a couple of years. And then I went back and tried to do some like athletic stuff, like, that I used to do all the time, like sports performance kind of style training, and I was struggling. And it was like a wake up call the same way, kind of.
Right.
It's like, well, shit, I like being strong, I like being big, but I also want to be able to move too. Like,
yeah.
Finding the balance is tough, though.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like, I think a lot of people, they play sports in high school or college, and after they're done, they just, lifting is the only thing that you can really do consistently. I mean, there's not like as many sports leagues out as there would be when you're a kid playing football or baseball and whatnot. And when you're lifting all the time, 100% of the time, sometimes people don't realize what you limit yourself to as far as like on the athletic spectrum, because lifting is only like a third of the game when it comes to sports and whatnot. And then all of a sudden you try to, again, do something athletic, and most of these guys, worst comes to worst, they pull something, they tear something because their body isn't used to that type of movement anymore.
Yeah. How many days a week do you roll typically?
So what I do, I kind of separate it into seasons for myself. So about 7-8 months out of the year, when I last saw you guys is towards the end of my last like powerlifting or strength phase season. And during that time, I roll maybe 4 to 5 days a week, and I might double up on one of those days. It just kind of depends. Right now, when I'm like in jiu-jitsu season fully, I'm doing jiu-jitsu 6 days a week, and then during the week, Monday through Thursday, I'm doing usually 2 to 3 sessions of that.
Oh, wow.
Saturday, we have a mixture of wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and then our competition team trains. But that's like a consecutive like 3 hours. But I try to overload myself on jiu-jitsu during the season for a conditioning aspect, just to fine-tune things and to make up for whatever lost time I didn't do when I was in the strength phase of my powerlifting and whatnot.
Damn. So you're like diving full in then, just fully committing there. That's awesome.
Yeah. I kind of consider myself an extremist with anything I do. So like I usually overdo it, to the point to where like I'll get sick and whatnot. But, I don't know. It's just kind of like a mental thing to me. I want to make sure that I'm getting better at least 1% every day. And I want to make sure that at least I'm trying to do something that I can assume that most of my competitors or opponents aren't doing, those extra sessions, doing over 5 days a week training wise. And that's for me, when I compete, that's my mental edge, because I know the work that I put in training is going to triumph over whoever I go against. And so that's what gives me the mental aspect when I go against somebody, because it's different than powerlifting where, no matter where you go, 675 is always going to look the same.
Right.
It's 7 plates on a bar. But when you do jiu-jitsu or wrestling or any type of like combat sport, the opponent's different every time. And it's different because the weight, besides being heavy, it doesn't really fight back. So when you're going against an actual person, they're going to prevent you from doing what you want to do. And sometimes it takes a little bit different mental preparation for myself to be able to go into stipulations like that.
Yeah. Shit, that makes sense. Yeah. It's a different type of competition still.
Yeah.
And so you just did a big jiu-jitsu competition like last week, right?
Yeah. So it's referred to as ADCC West Coast Trials, and basically in the jiu-jitsu community, what is thought of, it's kind of like the Olympic trials for jiu-jitsu, since jiu-jitsu isn't technically an Olympic sport. And it comes around every 2 years. They have West Coast in California and East Coast. They have it in New Jersey. you got the best of the best going here, and then you have the best of the best there coaching. I mean, it really is kind of like an Olympic trials for like a sport that's actually in like wrestling or something like that. And it was my first time doing it. Predominantly, there's going to be a lot of black belts in there because you got guys that really want to make it to that world stage. I mean, the stage once you make it past the trials is the most decorated stage in jiu-jitsu essentially. And so you got people from all over the country trying to make it out there. And it's so rare and it's so unique to be able to make it to that world stage because they only take the person who wins the bracket. And, the heavyweight bracket that I was in was fairly big. It had a little over 30 people, I believe. But in the 77 kilogram class, they had, I want to say, over 110 competitors in that bracket.
Holy
and for
shit.
one person, yeah. So, and anyone can sign up. So there's not like a limit or anything. So they had, that many competitors. And for one person out of that 110 or whatever to make it, that's pretty impressive, and it really shows, how skilled you have to be to make it to the next step. And for myself, I finished top 8. I ended up losing in the quarterfinals to the gentleman that won it 2 years ago. I lost by points in the last minute. So it was a super cool experience. I didn't really expect much going into it. I was just hoping I didn't lose my first match after I won. Yeah, it's just like one of those things. You drive 6 hours from Arizona to California. And I think the biggest stressor for me is like, damn, I don't want to go down there and lose my first match and then go home. Spend 6 hours to go spend 4 minutes on a jiu-jitsu mat is not ideal, but won the first one and then won the second one and then ended up facing that black belt in the quarterfinals. And, I couldn't ask for anything more because outside of the jiu-jitsu, actually CT was nice enough to drive down there and, support and watch my matches and stuff like that. And so that was unique in itself. So I can't complain about my experience at all.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's just gonna prepare you next year. Or next time it comes around, you're gonna be a little bit more prepared and hopefully do a little bit better. But yeah, like for first time out, like that's awesome, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it was a great experience. And like you said, it's getting your feet wet and understanding the atmosphere before like next time around, like, all right, I'm ready to go. I want to take this like, to the end, so this time it was a good experience for sure. And I accomplished much more than I would have ever thought. So it's good.
So what's the goal? Is jiu-jitsu the goal or is powerlifting the goal? Like which would you rather, I don't know, become the bigger aspect or do you want to keep them kind of both going?
Yeah. So, and that's a question I pondered, on several different occasions. And I think that my true answer would be that, when I analyze the two, like realistically, if I want to be realistic with myself and my goals, I don't think I'm ever going to be the best in powerlifting, nor do I think I'm ever going to be the best in jiu-jitsu. But if I can be that one, like, outlier that is relatively good or impressive in both and develop my own niche for myself, that's kind of where I want to stick out. Obviously, like, if being the best in the world is what I'm destined to be in either or, that'd be great. But realistically, maybe the odds aren't in my favor for that. But if I can take talent in both and show that I'm a little bit different in a sense that, most powerlifters aren't going as deep in jiu-jitsu as I have or vice versa.
Right.
That's where I would like to stand out and hopefully create a little bit of a different style of training for myself and that others can try to emulate.
Yeah, shit. Be different. You're probably a little bit bigger than most of the jiu-jitsu guys. Yeah. You're pretty stacked, bro.
So, well, so typically if I'm like at the top of the weight class, like if I'm cutting down, I'd say that definitely I have the strength advantage. And even in the heavyweights and stuff like that, I can definitely try to keep up as best as I can with the strength aspect. But, even like being stronger per se, being outweighed by like 50 or so pounds can still play its disadvantages, especially depending upon what like position you're in. Like, for example, when I ended up losing the match in the quarterfinals, he had maybe, I want to say 40, probably 50 pounds on me. And when he got on top, that was probably the hardest part of the match, like when he was mounted, because, my strength when he's on top doesn't play as much of a role, because when I try to use strength to get out in jiu-jitsu, that actually is more detrimental to my performance than anything. Jiu-jitsu's strength plays a role, but I'm sure you heard, like, it's more fluidity and technique and different things like that. So in certain positions, strength isn't super relevant. So, but you know, if I'm going to get somebody my actual weight, then yeah, I think I have an advantage in that aspect. And actually, from powerlifting, I think the core strength is actually where, is the biggest advantage or the most important advantage, because when people are trying to turn me down to my back and I know how to engage my core to keep that from happening or whatever position, I think that's where actually powerlifting outside of leg and back strength has actually benefited myself the most in the combat sports.
Yeah. The core strength of holding a heavy ass squat definitely carries over, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy. You don't think how stuff like that will transfer over, but it definitely does.
I wrestled for quite some time, and I was a heavyweight guy, but I was a small heavyweight.
Mm-hmm.
I was like 230, and you know how in wrestling it's like 230 to 285. So basically almost every single person that I wrestled was always bigger than me. I was always stronger, faster, more explosive. But I trained all the time, so big guys, you know, they like to push their weight on you and like especially get into the clinch. And I was always able to throw big guys around in the clinch just due to the fact that I did have quite a bit more strength. I can core strength, and I was able to be a lot more stable than them and just kind of toss them around. So yeah, that plays a huge role, man.
You wrestled all in high school and stuff?
Yeah, I wrestled. I like started in like 7th or 8th grade, and I wrestled like all the way to like junior year, and then senior year I was really behind on credits, so I wasn't able to wrestle.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Was that your main sport then? Or
Yeah, I loved it. I did football too, but I stopped playing football earlier, and I just continued doing wrestling. I loved wrestling, man. That was my favorite. But
that's awesome.
I did jiu-jitsu too for a little bit, and I wasn't terrible at it, but being like predominantly a wrestler, I made like a lot of mistakes in the beginning, so I got submitted a lot when I would free roll. You know, like putting your hands down, always wanting to be in like that dominant position. So I would get caught with triangles and arm bars like left and right, dude. Plus chasing the takedown is like exactly what a jiu-jitsu guy wants, because you fall into their guard. So I did that all the time, dude.
Yeah, no, I hear. Yeah, I think the majority of us coming from wrestling made the mistake. Sure, yeah. Guillotines, go for a double leg or something like that.
I would get so upset when someone submitted me with a guillotine, because I don't know what it is, but I cannot stand guillotines, dude. I'm like, please just something else besides, because that's like I feel like the guillotine's like a natural instinct to like lock onto someone's neck like as you're falling down, and I would just hate it because I would like know that I was gonna get caught in one, and then I would still not stop it from happening. And then I'd have to, and then I'm like, fuck, dude, every time.
I think just the feeling of getting choked in general just kind of makes the male body feel a little weaker.
It's one of the most humbling experiences on earth. Like, I rolled with a buddy of mine I think he's like a blue belt, like a year or so ago, and he's a smaller guy. He's maybe like 40 pounds lighter than me. And I was like, I'm way stronger than him though. Yeah. And I was like, this should be all right. And for sure got choked out like twice. I was like, fuck. And you're just there like, this small dude is fucking tapping me out right now. And you just feel like shit.
Yeah, I had similar experiences myself. Like, being 200, probably 30 pounds at the time, getting tapped out probably 4 or 5 times in a 5-minute round by 140-pound like black belt and stuff. It was super to me. I was getting pretty frustrated. But I mean, when you go back and look at the original UFC and you think of Royce Gracie, I mean, that's essentially the original point of jiu-jitsu, was to bring the big man down to size. Essentially, he showed how that was done, going against Dan Severn and stuff like that. And I actually used to have those tapes when I was probably 3 or 4 years old watching. And I always thought that watching him was so boring because I never understood the technical aspect of jiu-jitsu. But at the end, he'd always pull out the wins, beating Dan Severn, who Dan Severn was unstoppable before he met Royce. And it just kind of goes to show that, if you have a technical jiu-jitsu guy going against somebody that doesn't know, that guy's probably going to win 9 times out of 10, if at the least.
Yeah, dude, those old school UFC fights when like the very beginning were just so gnarly. Like, I almost like I appreciate where it's at now, but like back then when like dudes weren't specialized in everything, and it was like everyone had their own like individual
karate
like,
versus jiu-jitsu.
It was like legit like a taekwondo dude versus a jiu-jitsu guy. It was like that was cool to see. But
yeah, no, I think that was so unique, and it's going to be hard to ever replicate that again, because now everyone wants the best of what's out there, was jiu-jitsu, wrestling, Muay Thai for the most part, you know?
Yeah.
And but yeah, that was so cool back then before MMA really became a thing.
Yeah. It's gnarly, the specialization, like how everyone's becoming like so well-rounded in all the different aspects. Like our buddy Austin, he was a all-American wrestler, and now he's, you know, becoming accomplished in jiu-jitsu, and his striking's like sick, and it's like it's cool to see. It's cool, like, because you have to respect like that grind of becoming, you know, so well-rounded. But
yeah,
do you ever do any striking, or have any aspirations for doing some MMA? Or
yeah, so I do striking, not really as much as I should, especially if I want to break into MMA. I just have such a love for grappling, and so over here, most of our classes we have our jiu-jitsu class, our no-gi class, that's the only class going on, and then typically our gi jiu-jitsu class and our Muay Thai classes are going on at the same time. So I typically fall into the gi jiu-jitsu just to help my no-gi jiu-jitsu out. But yeah, I mean, realistically, I should put a little bit more time in it, but I'm not absolutely terrible. Like, I have a little bit of background when I actually did do some striking work when I was younger, but when I started wrestling and I started jiu-jitsu, just the sport of grappling itself, even judo too, that I do as well. The sport of grappling itself is something that I think that's where my passion lies. But obviously, I'd like to do MMA at some point, at least check it off my bucket list, whether it's one fight or whatever. And obviously, got to be well-rounded in striking before even starting MMA, because, I mean, you have people that go in there that wrestled and did pretty well, but didn't really put a lot of time in jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai, and they go in there and they might, I mean, realistically, they may wrestle fuck their opponent, but when you go against the higher level guys, that's when it shows, like, the wrestling can only take you so far if you don't have the Muay Thai or the jiu-jitsu actually go for the kill. Yeah,
makes sense. Wrestling, everyone always talks though that wrestling is if you have a wrestling background, like that's crucial for MMA.
Yeah.
I feel like it helps a lot with like defense and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the best base for sure. And it's that mindset, that grind. And Joe Rogan talks about that. And besides wrestling, the skills you develop, it's more so the mindset that allows you to be able to go and try to be so good in the two different aspects, and the grind itself, especially the conditioning factor in MMA, because, you know, a lot of times, as long as you make it out of the first round, first couple rounds, it's the conditioning, the better conditioned athlete that's going to win the fight, you know, because you could be as good, the best fighter in the world, but if your conditioning can't last in the third through fifth or the third and fourth or whatever, that's when all that kind of goes down the drain.
Right on.
Yeah.
So do you do any conditioning outside of rolling, or how's that work?
Yeah, so in jiu-jitsu season, when I'm actually doing the competition stuff like that, the conditioning that I do outside of it is a lot of different like plyometric work, explosive type training. As far as like actual cardiovascular conditioning, my favorite source is actually swimming, because I feel like it replicates the jiu-jitsu as much as possible as without actually having to do it. Because, well, one, you're using every muscle in your body when you're swimming: legs, arms, back, core. And then also, obviously, because you can't breathe, you have to learn to relax while exerting that energy. And so my goal when I'm doing the swimming, not to be Michael Phelps or anything, but my goal when I'm swimming is to essentially be able to get better at relaxing as I increase my overall volume or intensity with the amount of laps that I do. And then also what's great about swimming is that it's low impact. So instead of like running miles or running up hills all the time, which is good, but I don't feel the after like joint effects that I would if I'm running all the time and whatnot. So I like swimming as far as like cross training goes.
That's interesting. I think that's you're the first person I've heard actually talk about that in terms of like conditioning. Like normally you hear people doing like road work and that type of stuff, but yeah, right. Swimming makes total sense actually now that I think about it, especially the breathing aspect.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like, most people are integrated with pools, with like pool parties and stuff like that. But sometimes people forget how hard swimming actually is when you're really like going as hard as you can, you know. So, when I actually did my first and only bodybuilding show, that's what I did for my cardio the whole time, because outside of just being hard is a little bit more doable or like tolerant than like just doing the Stairmaster for an hour or whatever, like most people do. So I like the swimming a lot better.
Dude, swimming sucks. I tried to swim like I'm like 240, and I tried to swim maybe like over the summer, and I did like maybe a couple laps, and I was like, dude, this is way harder than I remember it being.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I do one lap and I'm done. I like just like doggy paddle the rest of the way. I can't. It's hard for me. I'm like 260,
and then you're
fat.
dead. You're like you're literally dead after.
Yeah.
Like you feel so exhausted. Yeah, dude, it makes total sense. And it's like you said, the low impact. That's key for the longevity aspect of it.
Yeah, especially definitely. With someone who like is a powerlifter and a jiu-jitsu.
Damn, dude, we should done that for this competition, man.
Dude, I would have been competing at 242s if I would have swam. Maybe I should have.
So outside of that, do you do a lot of coaching in either aspect, in the jiu-jitsu or the powerlifting? Do you do a lot of that?
Yeah. So here at TNT in Phoenix, I'm the wrestling coach here at TNT. Right. And then also I also cover jiu-jitsu classes and stuff like that too, as well as private training that I do out of the gym. And typically if we have somebody competing, I'm usually an alternate, like a coach, usually going to go coach and whatnot at the different tournaments we have around in the Valley. And when it comes to like wrestling and stuff like that, I don't teach like folk style, freestyle, or Greco. I teach how to translate wrestling takedowns per se into jiu-jitsu. So like the problems we were talking about earlier, as far as like landing in somebody's guard or getting guillotined off a double leg, I try to teach people how to change their wrestling that they got from folk style, freestyle, and now kind of alter it and enhance it a little bit to where it's proficient in jiu-jitsu, so they don't have to worry about those possibilities. I'm actually doing a seminar in a couple of weeks where I'm going to be actually trying to teach that concept, because once you kind of get the hang of it, it's a relatively easy transition, but you just got to be aware of what the possibilities are. And that's kind of the problem. Like, I mean, typically, like if you're going for a single leg or something like that, wrestlers are taught that keeping your elbows in tight is going to behoove you in a sense that, you know, you're stronger in this position. But a lot of times wrestlers will forget that and let their elbows trail out. And that's when Kimura and stuff like that open up, arm locks and whatnot. So a lot of times on wrestlers, I let them get on my leg and I see if I can't sneak my arms in a little bit to try to go for a Kimura, because that's something that wrestlers just don't think about because they're never put in that situation when they're competing. And then with powerlifting, I'm not an official coach per se, but when I have the How Strong team training together, I try to give my friendly advice, you know, to help everyone progress. So whether they're an advanced lifter or a beginning lifter.
Yeah. The whole How Strong concept, Jeremy and I were talking about it earlier. Like we remember the first time we saw you, I think last year at Iron Addicts. It was kind of like just you and a couple buddies. And then this year you had a whole squad out there. It was like 20, 30 people. It looked like.
Over the course of a year, I've seen How Strong and you personally just like blow up, dude. It's crazy.
Thank you. That really means a lot. Thank you. Because the main motivation actually started with Iron Wars, because, you know, making connections such as you guys, or getting to meet guys on Strength Cartel, meeting CT, and Iron Wars 3 kind of opened my mind, and I thought about myself and my brand, and it's like, if I could do that with just myself, what if I had brought, you know, all of my friends that I know are just as talented,
right?
And have everyone represent the brand, and then get people kind of wondering like, what the hell is this thing, you know? And that was the whole goal. And so maybe like 6 months before Iron Wars, I had met up with several of my friends that I wanted to do it, and we started training together, and then we trained together probably for about 4 months leading into the competition, and then we brought the team there obviously, and it turned out better than I could ever expected. But yeah, the whole point was to not only put myself on the map now, but to put the brand on the map, and now shed light on the different athletes that I had representing it too, because typically in Arizona, there's not a whole lot that comes out as far as like in the fitness or lifting world.
Right.
And I'd like to be able to try to make that first mark and maybe bring a little bit more awareness to what we got going on back home, because the house strong thing is such a small thing to what we got going on. We have so many talented powerlifters out here, and to being able to maybe bring some awareness to that is what would be nice on my end. I'd like to be able to do that for people.
Yeah, it's a cool aspect, like the whole team aspect of it. You know, like the supportive camaraderie. Like it's very like underrepresented in like powerlifting. I feel like like when you look at like a lot of these like elite powerlifters, it's usually just them training by themselves, like in their gym or in their garage, or you know at their gym. Like you don't really see like a team aspect for the most part outside of like Strength Cartel and you guys like what was the other one? There was like Gym Gang or something last year. Like so it's cool to see that team atmosphere, because like it was hype when you guys were going. Like it was cool. But I think that definitely that definitely needs to happen more in powerlifting. You know what I mean?
Right, for sure. And it's an individual sport, but I think team camaraderie and anything can bring individual success up too, as long as it's done correctly.
Yeah. No, the whole like it's cool to train by yourself every now and then, but then sometimes you get in that environment where like everyone's supportive and everyone's hitting PRs, and it just takes it to the next level.
Oh yeah, there's times where I get sick and tired of training alone, dude. No joke. I train alone most of the time, and sometimes I'm like, fuck, I just wish I had someone to hype me up or something. Like, I get excited off like other people's accomplishments. That's like always been one of my biggest motivators, is like seeing other people succeed. So when you train by yourself, it's just you. Like it's hard for me to get hyped up off my own accomplishments, because I may not feel like it's a accomplishment, or I may feel like I should do better. But when I see someone else hit like a PR, I'm like, oh fuck yeah, like, and then I want to like do better. So
yeah, definitely. From my experience, since we kind of have like our own like group deadlift party thing we do on Friday nights now, and the energy is definitely contagious. So like sometimes you can go in there after a long day at work or training and like not really feel like lifting heavy, but I mean, as long I feel like that you're kind of forced to live up to the standard that's set amongst everyone else. And so those days where you don't feel like training because you're tired or maybe you're not mentally into it, you could go into a team setting and all of a sudden all that changes. So that's nice. So in a sense, it kind of helps people stay consistent when maybe the self-motivation isn't there.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like Jeremy and I were talking last week about how sometimes too, you don't value like the accomplishment that you just made because you have such a high standard for yourself. So even though maybe you're making like a really good, like really good progress, you may not kind of acknowledge it or take the time to be like, oh man, that was awesome, because you're so focused on where you want to be that you kind of like disregard it. And so sometimes it's nice to kind of be in that environment where people are like, dude, that was fucking awesome. Like, cause it's like a mental boost that like allows you to kind of take a step back and be like, yeah, I'm actually making progress. It's like, it's good. You need that every now and then.
Oh yeah. That's why I love powerlifting meets, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you're lifting the type of weight that you guys are lifting and whatnot, and like you said, you can be very self-critical on yourself, and you could be lifting something that most people would be just they wouldn't be able to dream about that in their wildest dreams. But then you do that in front of a group of people, and everyone is supportive and in awe of the heavier weight that you're lifting, and it kind of reminds you like, oh yeah, this is impressive. I just know that I want to do more, you know. So it kind of helps remind you of where you came from, essentially. Because I mean, like, I think I always tell people when you're feeling frustrated or you don't feel like you're doing as best as you could, like, remember exactly where you started, and that's the best reminder of like the progress. And so you might feel like you're weak today, but you're still doing 200 pounds more than you did 2 years ago, you know? So that's the cool part.
Yeah. Respecting where you came from. So did you start with wrestling, or did you start with like lifting first back when you were way younger?
Yeah, so I actually started like learning how to lift weights, like picking up weights and stuff like that. I was five 5 years old in my garage. When I was little, my dad was always lifting weights, training super hard. We had our own like kind of home gym set, and just kind of watching him train and whatnot. He started teaching me the basics behind it, just proper form and whatnot. And through elementary school, we would always train and lift like on the weekends and whatnot. And to be honest, I absolutely hated it. And people ask like, "Oh, did your dad like force you to do it? Did you feel like you were forced?" He never even forced me to do it. He did it because he thought it would help me later on in life, which, I would like to say that it has.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things where I didn't like to do it, but I didn't want to disappoint my dad. So I just kind of toughed through it. But I started to see the benefits of it, like when I got into high school or even middle school, where I started getting a little bit more respect because I guess I had a little bit more muscle mass compared to my peers. And then besides that, getting into sports like wrestling, where now all the strength training leading up has benefited me. And then going into powerlifting after that, I mean, the way I kind of most people, for the most part, they start lifting when they start sports in high school. So you're 14, 15. And there's that 2 to 3 year learning curve where you're trying to learn how to lift properly, learn all the do's and don'ts. And at that point in my life, I had already been around weights for almost 9 years at that time, So I had a fair amount of experience leading into where I had hit that puberty stage. So when I had hit that puberty stage and the testosterone and stuff like that starts kicking in, I was already understanding, and I could actually train hard and take advantage of that. And I think that's why I'm a little bit stronger now than most people my age, is simply just because I had that head start leading into breaking into puberty and whatnot, because, there wasn't that learning curve for me.
Yeah, that's a huge thing that a lot of people like underestimate, is that when you start lifting weights, it's like a different neuromuscular like pattern. Like if you don't know how to perform a squat, it's going to be really hard for you to get strong at squatting,
Right. Yeah.
And I see that a lot. I saw that a lot when I was training some high school kids. I see these kids like 14, 15 that, have never done a squat really, and then the learning curve of actually learning, it takes them, 6 months to perfect like doing a squat. And so you're wasting all that time where your testosterone is spiking and like you could be building all this muscle and this strength. And I think people underestimate that greatly. It's So that's awesome that your dad did that, even though he didn't push you into doing it and you kind of did it on your own. But that's super important, I think. I was kind of the same way.
I mean, I'm very grateful for it. And it's crazy to think that I would have never guessed me doing that when I was so young in elementary school had led to something like this, maybe creating my own brand out of it and being able to compete at the level that I do. But everything happens for a reason, and I'm glad that happened early on in life, because now it's my livelihood essentially. Like, this is what I do, this is what I love, and I don't ever plan to stop. So this is my life.
Yeah. What's the plan with the brand moving forward? Are you trying to kind of build that up a little bit more, do some coaching with that, or more of a, like clothing, supplements, that kind of thing down the road, or what's the goal?
I think there's a lot of different avenues I can go down. I think the longer that it goes on, I start to get a little bit more specific on what I want to do. But essentially, I think the first things first is just to be able to get out there to where it becomes an entity that yes, thousands of people kind of look towards for motivation, build that audience, build that fan base. Because in my opinion, once you have that fan base, there's so many different avenues that you can go down. And as it continues to build, you can even create even more avenues of revenue as it grows. I think a long-term goal would be able to, similar to a lot of other people and a lot of other lifting teams, is to open up a gym, and with my backgrounds in lifting and jiu-jitsu and whatnot, to maybe be able to have both in the same gym. There's a gym down in Tucson that I've been to, and they have full jiu-jitsu mats, boxing ring, as well as like bodybuilding and powerlifting, pretty much all in one. And I saw that, and it kind of like, I was like, okay, wow, this is kind of like something that I would want to do if I can get things to grow to that point, be able to have everything in one. And that's why I'm pursuing so hard to get that black belt, because once you have that black belt, then you can do a lot of different things with that and attract a lot of different people to want to learn from you. And then what I've done in powerlifting, kind of the same thing. So, YouTube videos, the content, pushing the apparel, coaching, whatever. I mean, I think the possibilities are endless. And then a good end goal is, to be able to build a gym over here and have those different aspects to it in it for myself.
Yeah, that'd be rad, dude. Yeah, I don't think you ever really see. There aren't too many of those types of gyms around where everything's under one roof. Yeah, and the it's crazy nowadays with the social media aspect. Like it's so much easier to kind of it's easier to kind of build the brand, but it's also kind of hard because there's so many people trying to do something kind of similar. But Jay and I actually were talking about before we got on the call with you that we're starting to see your social media and YouTube kind of blowing up. Like it's awesome to see like the progress like that you've made through that. And like how do you find balance through that? Because it gets stressful to kind of worry about, I got to film a YouTube video here, I got to throw some content up on this, like, and then I got to worry about growing this. Like, how do you balance all that with the training?
So I think I accredited it to I think I have some like OCD traits, and so I try to use those in my favor. So when it comes to training and stuff like that, like if I miss a session, I'm probably like worrying about it for the next week. And I kind of try to think of it similar when it comes to like promotion and content and just being an entrepreneur and whatnot. And I try to kind of give myself little check marks throughout the week or throughout the day that I like to try to uphold, as far as like making a post every day or adding to the story or making the YouTube videos and whatnot, trying to find whatever free time that I have during the day. Like, for example, when I go to school, since I commute through shuttle, there's about like an hour of downtime that I have to work on, usually social media or YouTube type stuff, whether it's editing or posting. And then in between classes and whatnot at ASU, I usually have maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours of downtime that I like to kill. And I think my best way to balance things is to assess your whole entire 24 hours and see like, and people don't realize it, but see like, where do I have like 30 minutes of downtime, an hour of downtime, maybe even 20 minutes. And if you can get work done within that 20 minutes to an hour to 2 hours, you can get a lot more done than people realize. I think when people think about their day, like, I have work and I have training, and then when am I going to fit this in? It's like, just assess all 24 hours. And if you can stay consistent with 20 minutes a day, that's better than thinking you're too busy and not doing it at all. So I think that's my key to it.
Yeah. I think people overestimate, for the most part, they overestimate how much time they spend doing some stuff. Like they're like, I have no time. Like it takes me, this long to get ready. But if you actually break it down, it's, you actually have plenty of time. Like I thought about that the other day. I was like, oh shit. Like there's just not enough hours today. But then I was like, oh shit, but I spent, 30 minutes working on that. Like I could have been doing this instead. You just got to find the time. It's like you were saying, finding the time and then being consistent with it, because there's more than enough time. It's just time management.
And something that's funny that I thought of recently is with iPhones now, since it tells you the amount of screen time you have or whatever. And like some people might have 2, 3, 4 hours on that. Like if somebody were to say like, I don't have time, I'd be like, well, tell me what your screen time is on your phone. I think you could take a couple minutes out of that and probably do a lot more things. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
start leaving the phone in the living room when you go to the bathroom. That'll save you 30 minutes a trip.
Yeah, seriously.
Save me an hour, dude.
That's where all your time goes, right there.
There you go, man.
That's funny.
Oh man, yeah. The whole time management thing is fascinating, because I used to get that all the time when I was training at this. I was training at a commercial gym, and I was doing a lot of personal training, and people would come in and be like, "Dude, I have no time to like meal prep all this food, or I have no time to." Spend 30 minutes doing some stretching at the end of the day. Like I don't have the time for this. And it's like you can carve out out 10 minutes. You can carve out 10 minutes to like hop on the ground and just do a little stretching. Like it's really not as difficult as you make it out to seem, but it's I don't know. I think people it's getting a little bit better, I think. But for the most people will look at it and be like, someone looks at you and they're like, there's no way I could, get as strong as him or as good at jiu-jitsu as him. Like, because I don't have the time to commit to that. Right. But
yeah. And I've definitely heard that before as well. And I don't want to contest people's schedules. I don't live their lives, but I've heard that before too. But I think it's priorities at the end of the day. That's just all it is.
I always tell people, if you want it bad enough, you'll have time for it. Because I hear that every day, the same thing. Like, dude, sorry, I haven't been in like 2 weeks, man. I just don't have the time to train. It's like, you do. Yeah. How bad do you want this? Do you want to get stronger? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to get bigger? Like, whatever it is, like, how bad do you want to do that? Because if you want it bad enough, you'll fucking be in here. And you're not going to spend 2 weeks away and then give me some 100%. Bullshit excuse like I don't have time. I myself, I'm terrible with time management. And I always am so hard on myself because I'm like, fuck, I ran out of time to do this. And now I have to go do this, 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 and this. And realistically, it's all because I should have woken up like maybe an hour earlier instead of sleeping in or stayed on my phone less. Like, because usually I wake up, get straight on my phone. And then all of a sudden 45 minutes go by and I'm like, shit, I have things I have to do. I just wasted 45 minutes. So for me, I'm bad with time management. But I don't make excuses. I just know it's because I suck at managing my time. And I know that it's something that I have to get better at, but Yeah,
admit the problem first. And I think the point that you made, like, especially when it comes to just general fitness and like losing weight or looking a certain way, there's no way you can make an excuse and say that you don't have time for that, because outside of training, there's so many different aspects when it comes to that. You can't say you don't have time to eat food, otherwise you're going to die. So it's like the choices that you make throughout the day. Someone says that they don't have time to focus on a diet and whatnot. It's like, well, I don't think that's a good excuse. You have time to eat. You have time to you'll again make time to make sure your priorities are met, and obviously eating and drinking water is a priority of a human being in general. So, but yeah, that's a good point.
It's funny, people who are like, I just don't have time to eat. It's like, so you ate nothing today? What did you eat today? I had McDonald's. I'm like, dude, the time you spent to drive to McDonald's, order your food, pay for your food, then eat your food, you could have just heated up a meal that you prepped and eaten it in 10 times as less time.
Yeah, I didn't work out this. It's kind of like our deload week because we're doing a meet tomorrow, and so like I didn't really train as hard as I've been training, obviously. And so the amount of time I had, like I was sitting at home the other day and I was like, Jesus, like not going to the gym. Like I have so much time. Like, what am I gonna do in this time now? Like, I can't imagine like if I were like to not train and be like, oh, I don't have the time to go to the gym. Like, no, I had like hella time. And I was like, I almost didn't know what to do with it because I had so much time. I was like, what the hell?
It was super weird. I was like, dude, I don't like work till 2:00. I'm like, what the hell am I gonna do today?
Yeah.
Realistically, there's probably a bunch of things I could have done, but I didn't.
So what's your diet like since you're rolling so much? Like obviously you're a big guy, you got to maintain some muscle mass. Are you following anything specific or kind of just intuitively eating?
So and I get asked that a lot, and like I know the term like intuitive eating can kind of seem kind of silly at times, like or like an excuse to not count macros, and honestly that's exactly what it is. It is for me, at least, because I've been doing this a fair amount of time, and I kind of know about how much to eat, about how much I need to refuel, and the difference really is because I'm training so much. Typically in jiu-jitsu season, I'm getting about, again, like 2 or 3 sessions a day, maybe 2 in the morning or 2 at night, 1 in the morning, plus lifting. So for me to try to plan 4 to 5 meals around that is unrealistic. So what I do, I typically try to plan 2 to 3 big meals of good, clean, healthy food, usually obviously to give me the energy to perform during and then give me the energy to recover afterwards. And so when I'm dieting, that's typically what I try to do. When I'm not dieting and I'm just in powerlifting season, I probably eat like your typical powerlifter, but or your stereotypical powerlifter. But the jiu-jitsu kind of helps me keep my weight down in that sense. I just make sure that I'm in somewhat of a surplus, but I don't try to make sure I'm eating too much because I don't want to get too heavier. But in jiu-jitsu, I just try to overload on the good food because I know the amount of calories I'm burning, which realistically is going to be really hard to calculate even if I was doing my macros.
Right.
You know, it's so hard. We know, when you're typically at the gym and you're doing 30 minutes on the Stairmaster, you know how many calories you're burning. But when you're doing jiu-jitsu multiple times a day, I don't even know the way to calculate that unless there's like a very scientific machine that you hook me up to. So I think realistically, it's just a matter of getting in about what you know you need to perform and recover. And I think a lot of the times your body lets you know where that threshold is.
How much does your weight usually fluctuate when you go between the powerlifting season to the jiu-jitsu season?
I think I want to say about like 30 pounds, give or take, in that area. For me, the first like 10 to 12 flies off within like the first 3 days. I hold a lot of water, especially coming out of powerlifting season with my sodium and carb intake being so high.
Right.
But I want to say, so Iron Wars, I was like in the mid 230s. And then by the end of this, I plan to maybe get to 200 and 195 in that area.
Oh, yeah. That's a gnarly difference. You
Yeah,
get pretty lean then through jiu-jitsu, huh?
Yeah, and I try to drop as much body weight as I can, not only for performance in jiu-jitsu, but because when I go back to strength training, the idea is while I'm dropping weight to maintain as much as I can.
Right.
But then the idea is that once I start adding in the calories and doing the heavier strength training again, to be pound for pound stronger than I was at the 220 or 230 body weight in the last year. And I find that works the best for me.
That's probably actually helped out quite a bit in terms of the powerlifting, you know, constantly kind of breaking down and getting lean and then building back up from there.
Yeah. Like if I generally, you know, at that body weight and that low calories, if I can maintain a deadlift, you know, maybe mid 600s or something like that, I know as soon as I add the calories back in, it's just going to shoot straight back up again. And the muscle memory obviously is a wonderful thing. So with that, I just try to maintain and then give myself a higher starting point than I did the last time I started strength training.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, because I think a lot of people get kind of comfortable with where their body's at, and they kind of just kind of think, oh, I can just maintain this weight. And it's actually kind of something that I've run into, is like I've been like 235, 245 ish for like the last couple of years, and it's like,
right,
you kind of forget like how much actual body fat you're carrying around with you, and it's like, yeah, you could really optimize yourself quite a bit by doing a cut like that every, you know, year or so.
Yeah, I agree. And like the only time that I didn't do it was when I jumped straight into powerlifting, and I went two and a half years without doing anything that really required me to drop down. Like I wasn't doing bodybuilding, wasn't doing wrestling anymore. And that's when at my height, I got up to 270.
Holy shit.
And for me, yeah. So, and you can go on my Instagram, you can see what I looked like. I did a transformation post. But yeah, just that's when I didn't do that. That's what happened. And I'm trying not to get that big at my height again, because it just doesn't feel out well.
Yeah. That must have been pretty uncomfortable, actually. 270.
Yeah. And, it was, you know, the stereotypical things like not being able to like tie your shoes efficiently. And
that's like me right now.
Getting out of breath, like walking up the stairs and stuff like that. I'm like, oh wow, that's me now. So it was just something where I knew I needed to make a change, because it's like, wow, I'm like in the upper ends getting to 300 and I'm 5'8". Like that doesn't look good. So yeah,
getting wider than you are tall.
Yeah, seriously.
So what was the final kind of like wake up call when you were like, was it like the feeling out of breath walking up the stairs, or like what was like the wake up call where you're like, shit, I need to change this up?
It was going back to when it was maybe like 3 or 4 months before I had transitioned into jiu-jitsu, where I went to a wrestling room and wrestled, and I felt fine wrestling. But the next day I tried to squat, my joints were just aching, and like I was just so disappointed. Like what did I do to myself? What did I let myself get to? And so I was in prep for Mr. Olympia, the powerlifting meet in 2016 at the Expo. Okay. And I knew that as soon as I finished prep for that meet, I wanted to go back and get my body weight down. And it started with, well, maybe I can motivate myself to get my body weight down to do like a bodybuilding show again or something like that. But I haven't been like bodybuilding that much, to be honest with you. So like that didn't really stay that long. And then I was like, okay, well, wrestling. So I started wrestling around just kind of for fun. I was like, okay, well, I'll do this open tournament. And then I kind of dedicated myself to losing weight to do the open tournament. But obviously I'm not a college wrestler, nor am I in the Olympics or anything like that. So that doesn't have any long-term motivational effects for myself. So I went into here and I did jiu-jitsu, and it's similar to wrestling, and I didn't do that bad on my first day, but obviously there's a lot of room for improvement, and it just kind of showed me that maybe this is the next chapter of my life. Like this is showing me like what I'm meant to do next. And from there I just took it and ran with it. And that's when I had dropped from 2016 270 going down to May of 2018, I'm sorry, getting down to 190 for a photo shoot.
Damn.
So
I seen that photo shoot. Yeah, you were jacked. Super lean.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And still big too, like still a big dude.
Thank you. Yeah, it felt nice to not have that excess anymore. And the biggest thing for me is like my cheeks, man. Like I almost don't even care what my body looked like at the time, but my cheeks just blow up so much, and it's like not a good look. So
that's how I am. I was anytime I gain weight, like one of the first places I gain weight is like you can always see it in my face. I have this big old melon of a head. It's always just my big old round jaw and cheeks. And every time I lose weight, people always like, "Wow, dude, you look leaner. Your face looks good." I'm like, "Fuck, man, what about my stomach?" Like,
right?
That's it. Just my face. I was 310 at one time, and I remember I couldn't even like sleep on my back. I would like try and sleep on my back, and I couldn't even breathe, and it was super uncomfortable. Right. And I remember looking in the mirror and just being like, "What the fuck has happened to me?" Like 310 pounds, which I mean, I'm 6 foot, and I held the weight okay, but like with my shirt off, I was like, ugh. And cardio wise, I was just like terrible. I wasn't strong. I was weaker, heavier than I was when I was like 240. So I ended up
yeah, that's true.
And it fucked up my metabolism too. Eating so shitty and not training, it's crazy.
I've heard of that too.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, we get in the mindset of the gains and stuff like that, and we think that the heavier we are, the heavier that we're going to lift, and that can hold true to a certain point. But also, people don't calculate that. Like, I gained 50 pounds, and I gained 20, 30 pounds on my deadlift, which feels great. But at the end of the day, you're pound for pound stronger at the lighter weight than you are now. And for me, at least, I think pound for pound strength is more impressive than just weight itself.
Yeah.
So so being able to lift more than I did at 270 at a 220, 230 body weight is very pleasing for me, because it just shows me that the excess, or it just shows me that fat doesn't lift weight, essentially. Muscle lifts weight. Yeah. So, and I think that's something that people mistake a lot nowadays.
Yeah, we're not in the geared lifting days where creating like big different leverages will help, but the whole raw movement definitely, I think, has hopefully shifted people's mindsets to like, pound for pound strength is way cooler. Like,
right,
being able to deadlift 3 times your body weight is way cooler than being 300 pounds and deadlifting double your body weight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But
and I think a lot of people outside of powerlifting don't really see that or think to calculate that. They just see the weight on the bar. But like, when you're in powerlifting, you're seeing a guy that's 100, like Richard Hawthorne or something like that, compared to again somebody that's deadlifting maybe 100 pounds but weighs 100 more pounds but weighs 300. Is way more impressive to be that small and deadlift that.
Oh yeah, like for instance, me and Mooney, we were calculating like what our possible Wilks could be after this meet. And we're ending at right about the same exact numbers on all 3 lifts. And just Mooney being 20 pounds lighter than me, like, makes his Wilks like 20 points higher than mine. And I'm like, fuck,
really?
Like, that's the difference between like a high 300 Wilks and a low 400 Wilks. Like, in a 400 Wilks is what you want. You don't want a 300 Wilks, but it's just crazy. It's like, dude, we're the same exact strength, but you're 20 pounds lighter.
What federation are you guys doing?
USPA.
Yeah,
USPA. Okay, gotcha. Nice.
We're doing the drug tested USPA meet over at our our buddy's gym.
Oh, cool! They're doing drug tested stuff now. Have they done that over there before?
I think this is the second drug tested USPA meet that they've done in Oregon. Maybe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because the first one that I did in December, since I stopped, was the first drug tested meet they had over here. So it was cool that they started kind of implementing that. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I have kind of mixed feelings about it. Like I don't do steroids or anything, so
yeah,
it's not that like I'm worried. Oh man, I'll get popped or anything. It's more of like I don't judge people for doing gear or whatever. Like at the end of the day, you either lift the weight or you don't.
Yeah,
but,
totally.
But I hate people. I hate when guys use that as an excuse. Like, oh, it's only because that guy, is on steroids.
Sauce, yeah.
Like he's on some sauce. That's why he's lifting that. It's like he still has to put in the work. But
yeah,
it is cool though. It is cool though because it opens it up for a lot of people that would be intimidated going against guys that might be on some gear. Just because the numbers are so outrageous, you know what I mean? Like I did record breakers a couple of years ago, and I was lifting with like Larry Wheels and Pete Rubish and Kevin Oak. They were all warming up right next to me, and I'm just like over there like getting done with my warm ups, and like that's the weight they're starting with on their warm ups, and I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah, I could imagine. No, yeah, and it's like people don't realize that. Whether you're on gear or not, you don't just coincidentally walk up and deadlift 900 pounds,
Yeah. There's no magic pill, man. It's all hard work.
Yeah.
I know plenty of guys that have hopped on like long cycles and still been super like 500 pounds is a tough deadlift for them. It's like,
right.
It's all based on how much work you're willing to put in. Yeah, it helps, but at the end of the day, you still have to go in there and lift that bar. So. Mm-hmm. But it is cool that that's becoming because I think that was a big issue with the USPA is that it was becoming too many. It was kind of excluding all those guys that were on maybe on the cleaner side.
And from what I heard, there's a lot of USAPL lifters that aren't necessarily super happy with the USAPL, but they are hesitant to switch over to something like USPA because of the fact that they had not had an established drug tested federation at that point,
right.
And I think it's fair to have a separation between the two.
Definitely.
Because, I mean, you can't deny that there isn't a difference. Both are extremely impressive, but and it goes to show like drug tested doesn't always mean drug free, but you would hope that the people have the integrity to stay to that route. But yeah, it's nice that they have that option now because, I mean, if people want to compete with people with the same variables, it's nice to have an option to go down that route,
No, you definitely need to have a separation or different ways or different federations for people to compete in because, like you said, it does help and it does change the game a little bit. So you definitely need to be able to be like, I can go over here if I don't want to lift with the guys that are questionable,
Right.
What did you compete in? USPL?
USPA. I've done 3. The USPA is the biggest one I've done, or the most well known, and then I did a WABDL, which is bench or push pull. Essentially, it's an older federation, and then a UPA. I don't know if that's still around.
Huh. Yeah, there's so many different ones. It's crazy.
Yeah, but USPA is like the most well-known one that I've done.
Have you ever thought about doing like IPL or USP or USA weightlifting or US? What's the
USAPL?
Yeah, USAPL. That's what I'm talking about. Have you thought about doing that one?
IPL is international of USPA. You mean IPF? I think, right?
Yeah, IPF. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was looking at it, and I'm not gonna lie, like, they're lifters, like the elite guys are like the strongest, like out there, like they're crazy.
That's what I mean. Like those guys are fucking
and
nuts.
I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to it. I really because powerlifting is kind of like a second thing to me. It's more of I guess a hobby to me now. I take jiu-jitsu a little bit more seriously. So when I want to do a competition, I guess it's just kind of wherever it falls into my training schedule, like my seasons per se, like I told you about. But I haven't done it before, so I would be open to it. what's cool about the USAPL is that when you get to that national and world level, for the most part, you can actually like say that, yeah, like I'm a national or world champion, as opposed to like even USPA and IPL. Like you could say that you're a national champion. I mean, I'm a national champion. I'm a world champion, but I went against 1-2 guys, you know? So, and that's the problem with powerlifting too, is because it's been divided into so many like different divisions and categories and age groups to where it's hard to like have an actual true, unless you're doing an open class, to have a true like national champion. And then when you take into account that there's so many different federations, it's like, it's hard to find that number one true guy.
Yeah, there's so many federations, there's so many weight classes, and there's so many different meets. Like you could show up at a meet and be the only person in your weight class or age division. And
Yeah.
It's like,
exactly.
oh yeah, I got a gold medal for this one, but I competed against 0 people.
That was my first meet, so I did.
Right.
That was
Yeah,
my meet too, though, dude.
My first meet, there was no state records. Well, there was like a squat record, but it was like super small. But there was like no state records. I was the only person in my class because I was like 19 and walked away 3 state records, a gold medal, and it's like that's cool. Like I felt cool about that, but at the same time, I went against nobody. I was basically guaranteed. I could have lifted just the bar and it would have been a state record. So it's like that's not really that impressive, you know. Yeah, IPF is like fuck. You're an IPF champ. Ugh.
Yeah,
you are strong.
Yeah. And so I tell people when they want to get into powerlifting, they're always like, well, I don't know if I'm strong enough. Like, I don't want to get like embarrassed when I don't want to like get last place or whatever. I'm like, you're probably not even going to go against anyone. So just do your best.
You're for sure getting a medal. Chill.
Well, you know what? And even on that though, like with the whole embarrassment thing, like it's not even about that, right? Because it's all relative.
No.
Like it's about you going out there and doing the absolute best you can. Because I tell you what, man, all the meets I've done, which has only been like 3, but the meets that I've done, the meets Mooney's done, like everybody is so supportive and no one fucking cares. Like it's not how strong you are. It's are you stronger than you were? You know what I mean? It's a personal thing.
Well, everyone has different genetics. Everyone has different training age. Everyone has different scenarios. Like some people are working like 60 hours a week and still training, and so it's like, you know. And then some people have all day to train. You know, so it's all relative. Like it's almost not even a competition. It's almost like just a competition against yourself for the most part.
Yeah, 100%.
What are your best numbers? I've always been curious about that.
So I'm a gym lifter, so I'm the guy that everyone talks shit about. But
hey, gym lifts count too, bro.
My best deadlift was in the gym.
Yeah. So in competition, my best squat at 220 was 672. It was a 409 bench. The 409 bench went up pretty easily. And then 705 in competition. That's what I did in December.
Yeah, that was a sick.
And
video.
then
at 220s.
220 at the time. And then as far as like just best in general, I did hit a 700 squat in the gym, and then the 409 bench press was the best I've ever done because I'm like 100% dumbbells. So I'm more like worried about if I can get up to like the 200s one day, you know. But I don't really care much about the bar, so I didn't even do it. At like 150s. I got up to at the very end. I got up to 180s for a set of 5, and then so I'm hoping one day we'll get to the 200s. But it was a 409 bench, and then I did the clean 735 at CTs, and then the 765 that I went for that I was like. Yeah, this far away from getting was
you were so fucking close to that.
I know. I was watching that. I was like, pull! I was like yelling, dude. I was like, come! I think everyone was yelling.
It was just that last fucking little bit. Yeah. Oh man,
it was. I'm making excuses, but I thought that I would have gotten in my straps because in Iron Wars 3 they let us use straps, so I was using straps the whole training for that, and then the last second they said we couldn't. I was like, damn. So I don't know if it threw me off a little bit or what, but. It threw me off a little bit just like the day of, but whatever. I'll try to go for something more next time around, I guess.
Damn it, CT. Why couldn't you let them use straps, right? Oh, man. Yeah, that was the longest deadlift I think I've seen.
That's the longest I've ever yelled for someone.
You were holding that so long. It was like an isometric, bro.
I lost my voice.
And so people give me shit about straps and give me shit about like grip strength going away and stuff like that. But me personally, I've never had a grip strength issue. So, and I mean, at the end of the day, you're using straps, you're still gripping the bar super hard and stuff. And the jiu-jitsu stuff I do, I'm training my grip all the time. So I never felt any downplay from using straps. So just to clear the air on that.
Yeah, I don't get all the hate for the straps. Like I'm the same way. I've used straps all the time, but I've never, like, the bar's never fallen out of. I've never lost a bar because of my grip strength. Like, you know. So, but people like to point at that and be like, oh, he's only using straps.
People use all kinds of things. Oh, it's because he pulls sumo. Oh, it's because he uses straps. Oh, it's because he had a belt on. Oh, it's because he's on the sauce. It's like, shut up, dude. Be stoked for them.
Yeah. Right. Just pat the man on the back.
I know. Just be happy.
I think a lot of times I don't think it's grip strength. I think it's just their grip positioning or how they're gripping it. Like, a lot of people don't know to do like that Indian rug burn roll to lock their grip in. I had a friend who always had problem with his grip, like, giving out at the top. And then once he kind of did some research, he found out it was because, like, his rotation of his shoulder, where he was gripping on the bar, like his hand was only about right here. So when he would go down to grip, that's why it'd always break up at the top. So he had to go a little bit wider so that he could get that motion in his shoulder he needed. So then once he took it out wider and he was straight on both arms, that's when he didn't have those problems anymore.
That's the little things. Yeah, we have a buddy. We have a buddy who always grabs. He just grips and rips, and I've seen him pull, like Paul. He pulls like close to 700, and it's just in his fingertips, and it's the gnarliest thing I've ever seen. Like, it's literally just on the fingertips. The grip strength there.
Yeah, right. He could probably like poke holes through doors, dude, with just his fingers.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's the littlest thing that you need to make an adjustment to, and I think that's one of the cool things about lifting is, like, there's just so many little intricacies that you can adjust, like putting different pressure through your toes, or, you know, like focusing on a separate, like, just focusing on like a tiny little motion in your squat can change it dramatically, or your deadlift. And it's one of those cool things. Like, it's never going to be perfect, but it's cool to chase kind of like that perfection with
right. Yeah, and I think it's always evolving, and like there's always new theories and stuff like that coming out with body positioning and stuff like that, to where, you know, your form can always be evolving. Like, I know that my form, when I thought I had it down, like, for the most part for my body type, my form for squat and deadlift had changed drastically, even leading into Iron Wars, probably like the last month or so. Like, I used to deadlift very narrow with the thought that I'd be taking out range of motion and get more back engagement because I was so close. Right. But then at the same time, because I was deadlifting so narrow, I would start with my shoulders rolled forward, and that's why I would always fail so badly coming out and locking out at the top, because I couldn't roll them back. So then when I took my grip out wider and I could set my shoulders in the position that I want when I actually want to lock out, it started making my lockout a lot more fluid. I ended up sacrificing some explosion, but it made my pull overall cleaner and more consistent in the long run. So, yeah, it's always playing an evolutionizing form.
Yeah, I saw actually the Australian strength coach, the guy that trains Thor. He was actually I saw a post he posted like the other day, and he was actually just talking about that. He's like, people focus all like glutes, like, I got to do like block pulls or something. I got to work on my lockout because my lockout sucks. And then he talked about that exact same thing is, you know, where was your starting position, or where did your back go off, like the first 3-4 inches off the ground, rounding over? That's why you couldn't lock it out. You know, it's
right. And
just little things.
You know, I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but like, I know for me, like, when it gets to like 95, 100% of the max, and people are always yelling like, squeeze your butt, squeeze your butt, squeeze your butt, I can never like be like, oh, I'm just gonna squeeze my butt, it's gonna actually come out. Like, it's just so heavy, you know. And so when I thought about the positioning of it, and just starting in a position I want to lock out at, that's when it made it a lot easier. I think once you're at a certain weight threshold, all your muscles in your body are going to be squeezing regardless. So, you know, adding strength is good, but it's more so the positioning that allows you to get that final, that lockout that everyone struggles with.
Yeah. It's maintaining a position throughout the entire range of motion. And I think a lot of people fail, and I fail at that too. Like, my form needs to continue to evolve as well, but it's often overlooked. Like, it's not just where you start at, but it's where you like end at, like in that spot in between. Like, where is your back? Where is your upper back through the mid part of your pull? Like,
Right.
it changes the lift dramatically if you're just rounded slightly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, right on.
Oh yeah.
Well, you want to plug anything, dude? Where can people find you?
Cool. Yeah, so you guys can find me on Instagram at jhouse182, the letter J, the word house 182, and then my brand page is at Team Housestrong, TeamHouseCStrong, and then you can also find me on YouTube under Housestrong as well.
Right on, dude. Well, I appreciate this. This was cool, man.
Thank you. No, I had a great time. Thank you guys very much. It's good to see you guys both, and I wish you guys both the best of luck at the meet tomorrow.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate
Good
it,
to see you
bro.
too,
Yeah,
man.
I'll be keeping up to see how it all goes. But yeah, best of luck to you guys.
Thank you, man.
And you'll have to let us
Yeah,
know
of course.
if you get into that tournament up here.
Yeah, we'll come support.
I most definitely will. I'll let you guys know for sure.
Right on, dude. All right, man. Have a good one.
Cool. Yeah, likewise.
brother.
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye,
Later,
guys.
man.